LinkedIn presents.
This is the Forbes Books Podcast, conversations with remarkable folks who are impacting the world of business and beyond. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and today we're talking about goats. Co-founded by one of the greatest football players of all time, energy drink startup G.O.A.T Fuel has exploded since launching a few years ago. It's the brainchild of Jaqui Rice Gold and her dad, Hall of Famer Jerry Rice. We have a lot to get to, including starting a family business, why mushrooms are the key ingredient of their drink, and I'll also ask him to weigh in on Julian Edelman's spicy comments on the Kelce Brothers podcast a few days ago. I will also ask Jerry what his career would have been like if he played for my beloved New York Jets. Jaqui, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And Jerry, thanks for being on the pod.
Hey, let's go. Let's go. Let's have some fun. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And so, Jaqui, I want to start with you because 2 years ago, a friend of mine reached out to me and goes, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you talk to this guy who runs a beverage company down in Florida? They're having trouble breaking through and they want to get some good word out there. So I interviewed the fella and he says to me, listen, we are going to be the next great thing in the beverage space. I'm like, oh, cool. Wow, those are pretty big, lofty standards. So they send me cases of the stuff and I can't get rid of it fast enough. I'm like, I don't really drink this. All my friends are enjoying it. 2 years later, that drink is Celsius. And if you guys know about Celsius, it's blowing up right now. Like literally you cannot go anywhere without there being Celsius. So Jaqui, talk to me about going into the space that's highly competitive. The fight for like the shelf space is such a big part of this business. Can you take me back to the genesis and how you thought you'd be able to get G.O.A.T to the masses?
Sure thing. So the idea of G.O.A.T Fuel came about in 2019. I was living in LA. I've since moved to Dallas, Texas, where we're currently headquartered. But I was living in LA with my husband and I was working on a beauty startup. And I was burning the midnight oil, all types of oil. I was tired. I was drinking more caffeine than I had ever drank before. And I was finding these newer, better for you energy drinks at the gym. Now, mind you, I had never touched an energy drink before. All the stigma, had really affected me. I just generally believed that energy drinks were not good for you and had all these horrible ingredients. But there were better for you options in the gym. And I would say that Celsius was one of them. And it definitely piqued my interest. I started drinking them and then I started drinking and trying other brands too. And I still sometimes felt the jitters and the crash and all of that. And so a light bulb just kind of went off. I said, there's still opportunity to innovate here. And at the time in LA, mushrooms were exploding, another rapidly growing space. Our local coffee shop was offering mushroom add-ins to your like latte or cappuccino, and a light bulb went off for me. I said, oh, this is it. And me and my husband started talking. We said, if they're adding it to coffee, what would it look like to add adaptogen mushrooms to an energy drink? Adaptogen mushrooms, they help the way that your body manages stress. What our customers say is that they drink G.O.A.T Fuel and they don't experience any jitters or crash. So we use cordyceps, and they were discovered by goat herders in the Himalayas. Which we actually, interesting story on this. So we were already we loved mushrooms in general. We loved mushroom coffees, mushroom powders, all that stuff. And so we knew that cordyceps, they had been known and used for helping the way that your body utilizes oxygen, increasing your VO2 max and all those things. So when the idea of G.O.A.T Fuel came about, we said, hey, the performance mushroom are cordyceps. And then we learned after the fact that they were discovered by goat herders in the Himalayas. So it was almost like, it was meant to be. So look, my background was not beverage. My husband's background was not beverage. And my dad had invested in the beverage space before, but we really just came in as passionate consumers wanting to make a change in the space and then wanting to be innovative. And that was the mushrooms. And then that term G.O.A.T, the emotional component, right? Inspiring people to be the greatest versions of themselves. And so with all of that, we just decided to embark and launch G.O.A.T Fuel in January 2020. And it's been such an interesting journey. I mean, it was met with challenges out the gate, right? We launched straight into a pandemic, built the brand digital first, because that's the channel that we had. So we were direct to consumer. But we learned so much about our customers they already knew about mushrooms. They were Gen Zs and millennials. They were aware of mushrooms. So then we took those learnings out into retail. And I would say from us, we're leading with the mushrooms, and we're really hitting on three main spaces, right? Energy, sports, function. That's helped us stand out.
And I want to dig into the mushroom concept in a second. But first, Jerry, you played ball in the Bay Area during the Silicon Valley boom of the 80s and 90s. So I'm sure you were pitched all sorts of crazy ideas. And before we get into the goat fuel idea, what kind of stuff were you being pitched? Because I'm sure you got pitched every single app, every little gadget. Is there one that stands out to you, maybe that you regretted turning down, or one that you remember, this is crazy. I'm not putting my money into this.
Silicon Valley, we're known for so many great things. I would say probably the weirdest one for me, it had to do with maybe some gloves or something like that, some sensors that was in the gloves. And, they wanted to know the impact of the ball when you make a catch, all of those things. But, just being here in this area, it's really exciting. And, so many great opportunities. With Go Fuel, this was amazing. When my daughter, when Jaqui just asked me, what would you name it? Off the top of my head, if I had an energy drink, a sports energy drink, I said Go Fuel. And it just resonated. It's not just for athletes. It's just not just, it's for entrepreneurs. It could be a doctor, a lawyer, anyone that's inspired to be great on that given day. But, I'm glad to be able to put something out there with my core values, because everybody know about me. They know about my, 20 years of playing professional football. But now to be able to also impact the world outside of football, is something that I'm looking forward to.
And speaking of your playing days in relation to energy drinks, what did you guys do for energy in the 80s and 90s? Because I'm trying to think, I guess Red Bull might have been around towards the 90s, but what did you do for extra energy? Was it coffee? Was it greenies like they used to do in the old days? And
No greenies or anything like that. But I would say probably coffee. And I tried Red Bull, but I didn't like the taste. And I also, I would crash. My thing was I just had to be the best conditioned athlete. So my off-season training, what I put into that, I never got out of shape. I was constantly, just working every day. If I had Goat Field, back in the day, the 22,895 yards probably would have been 44,000. All my records and everything. But, to have Goat Field, cordyceps mushroom, the clean burst of energy, and how we impacting the world right now, I'm happy about that.
And Jaqui, I want to get into the mushroom of it all. And you mentioned the fact that a couple of years ago you were seeing it explode. And I remember reading all these articles about all the things you can do with mushrooms, but then it kind of it never really panned out in the mainstream. I mean, you'll see it in coffee shops and such, and obviously folks that are health conscious, you'll see it in a lot of health stores. But how were you able to thread that needle of introducing the idea of mushrooms into a sports energy drink?
The mushrooms that we use, they have a performance lean, right? The cordyceps, helping the way that your body utilizes oxygen, improving your VO2 max, anti-inflammatory properties. This is what they've been used in traditional Chinese medicine for centuries. And so when we think about Goat Fuel, right, we're a brand that is living authentically positioned between conventional energy and sports drinks. And so the mushrooms that we use, I think they are they're somewhat synonymous with performance. And so at the time in 2019, I will say, Joe, we had some question marks ourselves. We said, hey, how do you overcome the hurdle of educating our consumer of what this new innovation is, right? Remember back in the day with Red Bull and taurine, how that was a big old thing. How do you do this? This is the great experiment in trying to figure out how to educate our consumer. And so we immediately conducted a survey, and we were surprised to see that our consumer, And like I said before, they're more Gen Zs and millennials. They had heard about cordyceps mushrooms before, and they were aware of it. And so with that being said, we knew that, hey, then we've got an opportunity if we speak to mushrooms on the POS. Like we've got mushroom shaped static clings and all types of stuff out in the trade. And we mentioned front and center that goat fuel is powered by cordyceps. I would say that mushrooms, I mean, it's an exploding space. And I don't know whether it's The Last of Us, that show, really, even though it was like zombie mushrooms, but hey, it really did. It started to penetrate, I would say, the masses. And so there's still much work to be done, but we're onto something. And I think that for us, just getting the validation, the confirmation, knowing that our consumers were already aware of our types of mushrooms and the benefits that they are known for, I think that really proved for us that we were spot on for the next emerging trend. And this was back in 2019 when we were just in R&D for goat fuel. So it's been exciting to see mushrooms become more mainstream.
And you took the words out of my mouth because I was gonna bring up The Last of Us, because for folks that are not health conscious, their introduction to cordyceps is, oh my God, they make flesh-eating zombies because of this cordyceps virus or whatever it is. So Jerry, talk to me about you're riding this high, everything's going really well with Go Fuel, and then all of a sudden HBO drops this little show called The Last of Us, where the cordyceps is essentially the villain. Did that scare you at all in terms of like how you were going to market it and speak about cordyceps?
The Last of Us, I was not even aware of it.
Get out of here.
I'm serious. I'm serious. I never heard of it.
Really? All right. Well, Jerry, Jaqui has obviously heard of it, but there was a zombie show on HBO that premiered about 6 months ago, and the reason they say these zombies developed were because of cordyceps mushrooms, and that's why they became zombies. So Jaqui, so I'm glad I made it with Jerry. Put that in your queue. It's playing now on Max. So Jaqui, same question. When the show comes out, were you like, oh no, is this going to hurt goat fuel?
No. I mean, we saw it as an opportunity. We knew it would spark curiosity in the minds of people. We didn't feel threatened by it at all. We saw it as just an advantage, and just knowing that it was going to just spark the curiosity at a mass level, and that's what we needed. And so, we had some fun with that. But hey, look, the space, function in general is growing and it's exploding. I think 6% compounded annual growth rate, and the mushrooms are a piece of that. And so I would say just with incorporating the mushrooms, it really, for us, solidified our positioning across energy, sports, and function. And we're the first to market to do that. At the time when we launched Go Fuel, there were no other brands incorporating mushrooms in an RTD energy drink. And now we're starting to see a few pop up, but we planted that flag.
And I started the podcast talking about, the idea of getting the drinks to the masses, getting on the shelves. And you mentioned the fact that you started as a direct consumer company. Have you started making that transition to making Go Fuel available to folks, whether it's in your local 7-Eleven or your refuel, like places like that? How are you getting Go Fuel out?
Yep. So in 3 years, we've amassed about 15,000 doors. And so we took a very targeted approach in our go-to-market strategy after kind of the pandemic season and, having to go online first. But that we built out a DSD network amongst various beer wholesalers and focused on California, Texas, and Florida to start. The channels we were focused on were channels where the barrier of entry was not going to be extremely costly to us. So for us, that was grocery and mass and the health and fitness channels to start. So we were in Publix's, Target, Walmart's, regionals like Albertsons, Safeways. And so we focused there for first 2 years, and we're just now about to embark into convenience, and we're making a strong push. Our first major account that is starting, actually rolling out this month, is 7-Eleven. And so we will be rolling into about 5,000 7-Elevens and Speedways in California, Florida, Texas, Colorado, and Nevada. So I think for us, the DSD route was the right strategy because then you also get their up and down the street accounts, and you just are able to gain more points of distribution that way. But it was a large lift. It's tough to sign on distributors one by one, essentially, but they all talk. And if you really stay top of mind with them and build relationships with them, they'll be your first ambassadors, truly, right there advocating for you on the front lines. And so we've got a great network of distributors. And I think for us, we've been able to accelerate because of that.
And Jerry, talk to me about your day-to-day, because I know Jaqui and her husband are pretty much running the show, but talk to me about your role in Go Fuel.
Well, my role is fundraising, talking to the distributors, because I want to be on every call. I want them to know my involvement. It's not one of those situations where you sign an athlete, you give him money, and then he disappears. I'm in it 100%. I'm glad to be a co-founder. I believe in what we're doing here, and it's all about my team. So I'm not going to let my team down. So anytime they want me to come on board, talk to a distributor, I'm talking to them. If I have to go play golf with these guys, hang out with these guys, get to know these guys, because it's exactly what Jaqui said. Once you build a relationship with them, they're going to go to battle for you. I enjoy just being part of Go Fuel, and I look forward to, different opportunities.
Nice. And Jaqui, stepping back to that moment when you asked your dad to be part of the company, was there an intimidation factor there of just like, hey, this is going to be my company, Dad will be a partner, but like, I'm going to have to be tough on him. I'm going to have to be like, yo, Dad, get on the phone, call these guys. Were you worried about any of that going into when you decided to get into business, basically make it a family business?
Yeah, I mean, look, with family businesses, there are a lot of dynamics to consider, a ton of advantages to it, but then you just have to adjust to a new dynamic, a new relationship. And I think we've done a really good job at that. Look, my dad is known for his work ethic. I think he instilled the same in me. So I wasn't minding the late night calls. He wasn't minding them either. And my husband too. I mean, we work all the time, but it's a balance. So I think we had to learn boundaries. It is a sprint. It will always be a sprint, but I think maintaining boundaries and over communicating is important. And I am, as the one kind of steering the ship, it's a huge responsibility, but to have my father and my husband as well. I mean, it's a strong team. And couldn't do it without anyone who's involved. But my dad gets on me, I get on him. And that's just is what it is. We got to do what we got to do to make it work and to win.
I just try to stay out of the way.
That's good.
Yeah, I know she's running everything every day. And, it's a lot of work that goes into this. So I try to be mindful of that and not bug her, with little things, only stuff that's important for the company.
Nice. And speaking of the family, Jerry, I got to ask you about this because recently you guys have been grinding away with Go Fuel. And then all of a sudden, Julian Edelman decides to do an interview where he talks about you and your family all over again. And I'm curious, I want to get your take on Julian Edelman. When you met him in high school, did you have any idea that kid would become one of the best receivers in the league?
No, you know what? He was not a receiver. He was a quarterback.
Yeah.
He was a quarterback. So I never thought he would transition into a receiver, but he was able to do that. Very quiet kid, did some exceptional things with the Patriots and is still doing some great things off the field now. But I knew that he was a really good quarterback, but I never thought he could transition to a good receiver.
And did you know about the ring thing where he would try on your rings and stuff in the house? Do you know that?
And no, I didn't know.
I didn't know about that either. Okay, so let's clear that up.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay. And Jaqui, I want to get your take on this because you should have the last word on that. Is this story of you taking Julian Edelman to the prom pops up every few years, as you know. TMZ will randomly call you up. He'll mention it in an interview. And here we go in 2023. Whatever year, 15, 20 years later, however long it's been. Is it funny to you that this sort of like just moment in time just keeps popping up on your feed every once in a while, Jaqui?
I'm surprised every time I see it. I'm like, well, wow, it's still going on. All right. No, it's fun. I mean, it's fine. But I'll give you a little insight tip, Joe, because it actually wasn't prom. That's the funny part of it all. We actually never went to prom together. it was a semi-formal dance or something like that. Julian, you're
Ah.
too late to prom. I was already taken for prom. So
The narrative's all broken now. It wasn't the prom. The conspiracy's been blown up right in front of us, Jerry. And so, Jerry, I want to ask you a couple of quick football questions. So behind me, you'll see I have a Jets football helmet. And if you recall, when you were eligible for the NFL draft, there was a certain team from New York, which I root for, decided to choose an individual by the name of Altoon, passing you up, and then you went on to have now, mind you, Altoon had a great career with the Jets.
Yes, he did.
He did. But have you ever imagined, I always ask kind of the sliding doors question, do you think you could have had your career if you had a ball being thrown to you by the likes of Ken O'Brien, Browning Nagel? I'm trying to remember all the quarterbacks back in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
Do you think you could have had that career had you been chosen by the Jets?
Without a doubt, because
Really?
it comes down to work ethic. And whoever is behind center, you got to make that person look good. You got to build confidence with that individual. I went through a lot of quarterbacks back in the day. Joe Montana, Steve Young, Steve Bono, Jeff Garcia, and a lot of other guys. Whoever they put behind center, it starts in practice. You build that relationship, then you're going to have those opportunities doing those football games, and you're going to win football games. So yes, without a doubt.
I would have felt a lot better if you said no, because now all of a sudden we probably would have won Super Bowls, winning the playoffs every year. So thanks,
Well, you
Jerry.
guys got Aaron Rodgers now. So now let's go. It's time for you guys to go this year.
It is our turn. And lastly, Jaqui, work ethic has been sort of a steady thread during this conversation. When did you realize that you kind of inherited your dad's DNA of work ethic? Because it sounds like you are grinding it out. This is obviously Go Fuel as a passion in your life. When did you realize the importance of work ethic and how it rubbed off from your old man?
Oh, it was always a theme in our household as well. I was an athlete too. And so I would say working with my dad and in basketball, it was, we'd always, practice together. And I was inspired by him and his story and the example that he set. And he was just always in our household. You always went the extra mile every time. And so I went to college at Georgetown. I got my bachelor's in government, and then I went on to law school, and I dropped out after a year. I realized I wasn't, I didn't want to practice. I was doing well in school, but I wasn't going to actually practice law. And really, I caught the entrepreneurial bug. And I think that's where I started really channeling this drive to create value and to solve problems. And I founded a beauty tech startup for hair extensions, and then just started drinking a lot of caffeine and made the pivot to Go Fuel. And I think the tenacity, the drive, and staying open-minded and just and knowing that sometimes your path, it doesn't look like what you initially set out to do, but if you stay open-minded, you'll sometimes just embark on an amazing journey. And that it has been Go Fuel for me. And I just channeled, I think, all of that tenacity from my upbringing to my education and, failed startups to Go Fuel.
That's awesome. And lastly, Jerry, you're in a room full of your awards. You got your Hall of Fame bust right there. That's your legacy. But also, your children are your legacy. So
Right.
how proud does it make you feel to see Jaqui follow her dreams, realizing that, law school wasn't for me. I've got to do other things. I need something else to fill this space in my soul. How great does it make you feel that Jaqui found that? She, like you found
Right.
football. Tell me about that.
It's really incredible. And, the statement that she's making for women right now, being the CEO of Go Fuel and doing a fantastic job. You can't even put a price on it. To have this opportunity to work with her is, it's amazing. It's amazing because I'm seeing her grow. I'm seeing her develop to take control of this company, and very similar to what Bill Walsh would do back in the day with the San Francisco 49ers, Eddie DeBarlo. We're just going to keep building. And I'm one of those guys that I never feel like I have arrived. You always stay hungry that way. even when my teammates back in the day, they would say, hey, look, you have nothing else to work for. I felt like I still had, things to work for. And I think Jaqui, she operates the same way. She's hungry and she wants more, and she's ideal for Go Field.
That's awesome. How does that make you feel, Jaqui? Because I'm sure you don't have conversation unless you have a podcast with your old man. You're probably not going to talk. What's it feel to hear those words from your dad, who obviously you both have a lot of pride in each other and sense the love between the two of you. But the fact that he's around to see the person you become, I mean, that's priceless, right?
It is. It's certainly special, and I appreciate it. This is a family-founded brand, and there's so much legacy in this, and I'm just very thankful to be a part of it and to be doing it with the best people, and that's my dad and my husband and our team.
Jaqui Rice Gold, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
And Jerry, thank you very much. Thank you. You shattered my illusions at the Jets about the
No,
Jets.
what? No, look, man, look. Al Toon, one of the greatest.
Yes, he is.
I could not believe the size of this guy. He was so tall.
I know. All right. Well, all right. So last thing, Jerry, how many wins for the Jets this year?
I'm going to go 10-7.
10-7. All right. I'll take it. Jerry, thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
And that'll do it for another episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe. That way you'll get new episodes as soon as they're available. And if you have a spare moment, I would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a review, which would help other exceptional entrepreneurs like you discover the show. You can always connect with me on Twitter/X, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Joe Partavilla. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.